next question, and Stephen Sandstrom will answer first. Three-part question. We've combined.
I love these multiple.
So take notes. We've combined three different cards because they're all related. And so basically the question is, what is your stand on public education, choice, and vouchers, all related to public education? We'll do this as a 2-minute question, and if it looks like it's not going to work, we'll give you an extra minute at the end.
Oh, sounds good. Okay, education, 3 issues. First off, public education. You know, public education, the vast majority of the children in this district go to traditional public schools. And so I am a huge supporter of public education. In fact, the 2 years that I have been a legislator on the Hill, we had passed the 2 largest budgets ever in the history of the state of Utah, the largest increases ever in the state of Utah for public education. It's been nearly $1 billion. We've raised teacher salaries across the board by $4,200. We've put $33 million into teacher supplies, so teachers do not have to use their own money to buy classroom supplies. We are doing our part for public education, and I'm very proud to be part of that process. Now, as far as choice goes, and yes, I voted for the voucher bill. And the reason I voted for the voucher bill was because I received literally hundreds and hundreds of emails, phone calls from my constituents here in this district. And I represent all voices in education. That is what I told people 2 years ago. I felt that we needed to represent everyone. And as such, the people of House District 58 voted in favor of the ensuing referendum. And so it's pretty interesting to me that I'm being criticized by my Democrat opponent for representing the people that I swore an oath to represent. And one thing that we have to clarify, the voucher bill did not take a single dime from public education. It did not take a single penny. And that is the facts. It might be distorted one way or the other, but it did not. And as far as choice, I support legislation that's helped not only that, but I've helped charter schools to make sure they're viable. And I've also helped people that homeschool to make sure that their kids can participate in extracurricular activities and such as homeschool. So education is important, but I think parents have the right to be involved in how they educate their children. And they ultimately should control how that works. And yes, I am a huge supporter of public education. I will continue to be. That is the vast majority of our people. But that does not mean that we cannot have people who are taxpayers take some of their money and maybe look at other ways just in case their children aren't getting what they need out of public education, or maybe slipping through the cracks, or maybe just want something different. So that's my goal, and that's what I'll always be doing, representing all voices in education.
Mr. Bell?
Yes. Well, you will hear both candidates say that they are strong supporters of public education. There's just no question of my support for public education. At least I hope there isn't. I think the legislature has done a very good job funding public education the last 2 years. But my issue is you don't make up for the deficits of 2 decades, 3 decades with 2 years. There needs to be long-term plan, a vision on a long-term basis for public education. The dollars put into public education that Steve has cited, there's been no comment about the growth the state has experienced. A good share of that money has gone to fund growth. And I think we need to ask a school teacher if they feel like they're any better off now than they were 2 years ago. I think to some degree they are. I think the legislature, as I've said, the last couple of years, I think it was the $2,500 and it was probably $1,700 increase that each teacher got was admirable. But again, that's 2 years, and we've had some economic times, particularly during the 90s, when the promise from the legislature was that we would move Utah at least to an average within the western states in terms of teacher salaries and those sorts of things. Those promises were not fulfilled. Our percentage of funding going to public education has declined every year. If we could just hold those percentages where they were, even 10 years ago, we would have $400 to $500 million more going into public education than now is the case. How are we doing on time? Where am I?
You have 45 seconds.
I'm in opposition to vouchers, and my reason is it's an example of using public dollars for private purpose. For me, our public schools are for the public good of all of those who not only attend, but for the community as well. And to me, it's like I-15. I may avoid it, but I'm paying taxes for it. I haven't been to Zions Park for 40 years. I'm going to pay taxes for it. It's for the good of the community, and that's why we pay to public education. One last thing, for it to be said that it doesn't harm public education. No dollar would have come out of public education. Well, that $8 to $9 million or whatever it was needed to go somewhere, and if it couldn't go to public education, maybe it needs to go to help defray the cost of health insurance for a working man or woman in a small business that can no longer have health care. Maybe it needs to go for prisons. Maybe it needs to go for dental care for a child. To me, to say, well, it doesn't harm, that's not an adequate answer.
Do you want a 1 minute back?
We'll give you each 1 minute. You can either answer that question or whatever came up for you. How's that? Oh, let's see. So you 1 minute and then you 1 minute.
The governor takes a role in budget and will prepare a budget and present it to the legislature. The legislature has the responsibility for funding. They would provide the funds. An amount is given to each school district, usually based on what's called a weighted pupil unit. There'd be a certain amount of money given to each district based on the number of children. And some are funded at 1 unit, but others are funded at 2 or 3 units depending on their disability or that sort of thing. But there's an amount of money given to the district, and the school board would make the final decision. Usually their staff, the superintendent and so forth, would present a budget to the school board, but the elected school board would be the final determiners of how those dollars were spent.
Representative Sandstrom.
Yeah, just quickly to follow up a little bit, is correct. The way the Pupil Unit is distributed equally among all school districts to the district, and then they disperse the funds. And that weighted Pupil Unit is set by the legislature during the budget process. It's interesting where we talk about, well, if we just would have kept growing education exponentially, $400, $500 million more, where would that money come from? We would have to have significant income tax hikes to do that. And I'm not about to do that to the people of Utah, the people in my district. And it's interesting, we talk about that just in the 2 years I've been there, we have raised spending by 24.7%, education spending. We have not grown by 24.7% in 2 years. Now, I can't worry about the sins of the past if past legislatures have not done their part in education. All I can do is what I can do as your representative now. And I have stepped up to the plate and had supported massive increases in public education funding. So to say that I'm somehow responsible, or anybody is, for what happened 20 years ago, I think that's something that can't even be discussed when we are showing that we're increasing funding. And one comment I thought was interesting about back to the voucher issue. That was taken as, is that time? I'm sorry. Just to finish the sentence, it's your money. It's not the public. It's not the state's money. It's your money.